We're joined now by Richard Blanco from the National Residential Landlords Association. Morning to you. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
And you're a landlord. You know about HMOs in detail. Who's living in them? Who are the people who are deciding to share a house, sometimes with 3 or 4 strangers?
Yes, it's a huge variety. I mean, it's often students, of course, but it can be young professionals. And certainly with my HMOs in London, I've got 3 cyclists who use one of the rooms to store their beautiful cycles. I've got, people working in the creative industries, teachers, nurses, doctors. They're a vital part, really, of the kind of housing economy, if you like.
And how do you find the people? How do they come to you?
Well, I always let my properties to a group of sharers, so they often come through an agent. So
they've already come together before you put them into the house, so it's not like 4 complete strangers.
That's right. And what happens is, it's cheaper for them because they may be spending in London perhaps something like £800 each, whereas if they were going for a 1-bed flat, it might cost them at least £1,200, £1,500 in parts of London where I rent. That is different from a bedsit style HMO where properties are let by the room, and they can have a different feel to them. And the management conditions there are more stringent, so the fire safety conditions are more stringent, for example.
What's the difference then for you, from a landlord's perspective, of managing a home that's HMO and, say, if it was just a family of 4 people instead?
There can be issues like people moving out halfway through because perhaps they're getting married or something like that, so you have to try and slot a new person in. And certainly if you've got a bedsit-style HMO, then sometimes people don't get on, or people have a relationship, the relationship ends and then they both want to move out. So those sorts of issues have to be managed quite carefully.
But what I mean is, can you see why that would generate more pressure on infrastructure around the house?
Yes, and I mean, what local authorities complain about sometimes is that waste isn't properly managed. So organising those sorts of things, making sure the common parts are cleaned. Tenants sometimes don't look after the gardens, so they can get overgrown. So I tend to trim all of my hedges, for example, because I've got an electric hedge trimmer and I know my tenants are not going to do it. So just making sure you stay on top of those sorts of things.
And is that because they are maybe less invested in the property?
Possibly, yes. I mean, it does depend. I think it's a lot to do with the relationship between the landlord and the tenant, and I put a lot of importance on that. I know all of my tenants. I've had probably something like 8 children born in my properties, and I know the names of everybody, and we have a good relationship.
Oh, but that's... You're obviously a good landlord. Are all landlords to the same standard? A few people have been in touch this morning. Some have talked about landlords treating them like children, just turning up unannounced. The standard of landlords isn't uniform, is it?
It's true. I mean, let's be clear, something like 80% of tenants say they're satisfied or very satisfied with their accommodation. That's according to the English Housing Survey. But there is a minority of landlords that don't do a good job. Certainly, they should not be turning up unannounced. They should be giving at least 24 hours notice and treat tenants with dignity and respect, and that's what we would expect. And the vast majority of landlords do a good job, and we rely on tenants reporting repairs and also tenants behaving responsibly as well. We do occasionally get difficult tenants who cause antisocial behaviour, loud music, parties, those sorts of things that, we have to try and control.
What's the solution here, then? Because HMOs are clearly putting pressure in some neighbourhoods, as we saw in that report. Does licensing need to change? Does regulation need to change? Because there is a housing crisis. It's not going to end, is it?
No, we absolutely I would say we need more HMOs, but we need them to be well managed. We have got a very clunky licensing system. It can cost £2,000 to get a licence. There's an emphasis on a different licence if people are unrelated, and that takes away the flexibility of housing, really, because you might have a family one year and then unrelated sharers the next year. Well, you'd have to change your licence and pay another £2,000 in that situation. So we need a more flexible situation, and we need more local authorities to take proper enforcement action. Currently, 20 out of the 295 local authorities carry out half of the, or serve half of the notices where action is required.
And that's because their resources are stretched, presumably.
Their resources are very stretched. They're therefore charging higher licensing fees, which is annoying a lot of landlords because it seems very unfair.
Wow. Tony, thank you very much. Really interesting, and obviously 2 sides to that, aren't there?
Absolutely, yeah. National Residential Landlords Association, Richard Blanco, thank you very much.